Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. This one's proudly brought to you by Forge College. So today, we've got a really critical mission. We're going to take raw, vulnerable code and completely transform it into a secure, totally unbreakable data fortress. Yup, we're diving deep into security and validation for Borsh Serialization in Solana. Let's get right into it.
Because, let's be real here for a second. Trusting unvalidated serialized bytes, it's basically like handing a total stranger the master blueprint to your fortress, leaving the gates wide open and just crossing your fingers they only use the front door. I mean, it's a terrifyingly bad idea. In the Solana ecosystem, if you're deserializing Borsh data without explicit guards in place, just a few tiny, untrusted bytes can cause a massive runtime panic, or worse, corrupt your entire program state. And yeah, we absolutely cannot let that happen.
All right, so here's our blueprint for today. We're going to look at the threat of untrusted bytes, then cover the envelope and clauses model. After that, we'll break down the anatomy of an attack, set up our 3 rings of defense, and finish up with a master validation checklist. Simple enough, right?
Okay, let's jump straight into phase 1, the threat of untrusted bytes.
So, if you remember our previous lesson on optimizing Borsh serialization and testing, our whole focus there was on visibility, right? Making the data fit perfectly, finding the exact boundaries of our structures. Well, today, we're shifting gears. We're moving away from just optimization and stepping fully into security. So instead of just finding those boundaries, we are aggressively defending them. It's all about deliberate defensive practice.
And that brings us to our core concept for the day, defensive deserialization. Basically, this is the practice of putting explicit, super deliberate checks at exact boundaries. Why? To prevent malformed input from causing unsafe program behavior or, those dreaded runtime panics. Think of it like this. You're installing high-tension tripwires and heavy mechanical locks right inside your vault. You aren't just blindly trusting that the vault door is shut, you are actively protecting your program's state from anyone who even tries to jiggle the handle.
To pull this off, we need a totally new way to look at our data. So, Section 2, the envelope and clauses. We really need a mental model that treats serialized account data not just as some random blob of bytes, but as a strict, structured contract. I actually love visualizing this as a highly precise mechanical sorter checking incoming mail. First up, the machine looks at the envelope. This is your outer header or version index. It tells the system what it's even looking at. Then, inside that envelope, you've got fixed clauses. These are fixed-length fields laid out in a strict, totally unchangeable order. And finally, the variable clauses. Think vectors or strings. These absolutely have to start with a clear length declaration. If any piece of mail violates this setup, boom, the sorter spits it out instantly.
But what happens when someone actually tries to break our shiny new mechanical sorter? Let's pivot to a bit of a horror story. Section 3. Anatomy of an attack.
Let's see what a malicious actor, a stick-figure saboteur if you will, can do to your system. Notice the incredibly sneaky ways an attacker will try to slip past the bouncer at your program's club. They'll throw in malformed variant indices just to bypass your logic. They'll forge length prefixes, which completely wreaks havoc on your memory. They might even try field-level semantic violations, or just toss in totally unknown contract versions, just hoping your program accidentally says, "Sure, come on in."
Let's make this super concrete. Imagine you've got a behavior enum in your account state. It only has 3 valid variants: init, pending, and final. So that maps to indices 0, 1, and 2. Simple. But our saboteur comes along and casually sends an index of 255. If your program blindly trusts that number and tries to map it, your program triggers an out-of-range conversion and immediately panics. You basically just let a phantom VIP into the club and they trash the place on minute 1. Or what about a forged length prefix? Say the attacker sends a vector length claiming there are, 100,000 elements coming up. If your code just nods and trusts that prefix, it's going to try to allocate memory for 100,000 items. And in the Solana environment, that massive compute cost is going to cause a transaction failure right in the middle of execution. It's exactly like someone ordering 100,000 incredibly expensive drinks at the bar and then just walking out before the tab is even calculated.
Obviously, we cannot let that happen, so it's time to install our security mechanisms. Section 4, the 3 rings of defense.
We are going to layer these defenses right into our blueprint. The absolute secret sauce here is that we process incoming data chronologically. This is so smart because it lets us do the cheap, really easy checks up front, and we save the precise, computationally expensive checks for later. So we break this down into point 1, pre-deserialize, point 2, guarded deserialize, and point 3, post-deserialize.
All right, ring 1 is pre-deserialize. This is purely structural. Before you do any real heavy lifting, you check the raw buffer length against your minimum expected size. You also verify the optional header or version field. The goal? Fail fast and fail cheaply on anything that's truncated or incompatible. Going back to our club metaphor, this is the bouncer checking IDs right outside the door. If they don't have an ID, or they hand you a napkin with a face drawn in crayon, you don't even let them inside. You save your compute budget.
Okay, so let's say they make it inside. Now they hit ring 2, guarded deserialize. This is where we handle the bounce checking. We validate that the variant index actually fits our known variant count. Remember our friend trying to use index 255 earlier? Yep, not happening anymore. We also enforce incredibly strict upper bounds on container lengths. And crucially, we verify the buffer actually contains enough bytes before we start running any decoding loops. We're just making sure the guest list matches reality, making sure we don't overallocate our resources. And finally, we hit ring 3, post-deserialize. This is the semantic layer. The data is completely decoded now, but guess what? We still don't blindly trust it. We assert our business rules, for example, making sure a token amount isn't mathematically negative. We confirm that owner pub keys aren't just empty default 0 values. And hey, if the data is highly critical, we might even verify cryptographic checksums or signatures. This layer guarantees that even if the data was shaped correctly on the outside, they aren't breaking the fundamental rules of the house now that they're inside.
With our defenses completely mapped out, let's bring it all together. Section 5, the validation checklist.
This right here brilliantly illustrates our master blueprint. It's a highly actionable cheat sheet you'll definitely want to keep handy. Notice how it maps directly to those 3 rings we just talked about? During pre-deserialize, you check minimum buffer sizes and version headers. That way you reject truncated buffers fast and cheap. Then, moving to guarded deserialize, you tightly bound your indices and length prefixes before you ever allocate memory. That avoids excessive compute and out-of-range mapping. And lastly, post-deserialize ensures your decoded data actually follows the rules with field-level semantic invariance. Applying this checklist, it makes your program predictable, highly testable, and honestly, an absolute dream for security auditors.
So the really crucial point here is how you actually apply this framework today. As you move into your upcoming capstone overview and project scope, you need to start sketching your defensive lines right now. Document your account layouts thoroughly. Actually write down the specific guard points for each one. Know your headers, define your max lengths, set your post-deserialization invariants, and most importantly, I can't stress this enough, write automated test cases specifically designed to throw malformed garbage inputs at your program. You want to make absolutely sure it rejects them exactly the way you planned.
Which leaves us with one final, kind of provocative question. Is your data fortress truly ready for the real world? Well, by implementing these layered validation principles, you can confidently say yes, it absolutely is. All right, thank you all so much for joining me today. Just a quick reminder, this explainer was made by Forge College. If you want to dive deeper into Solana development, really refine those Web3 skills, or honestly just learn more about this subject, I highly encourage you to check out forge.college. Keep building, keep defending those boundaries, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.